One of the goals of philosophy is wage theoretical battle. That is why we can say that every thesis is always, by its very nature, an antithesis. A thesis is only ever put forward in opposition to another thesis or in defense of a new one. Without claiming to be exhaustive, I maintain that every philosophy reproduces within itself, in one way or another, the conflict in which it finds itself compromised and caught up in the outside world. Theory is not a prescription, but a method of analysis. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. So what? We are interested in the mechanism that ensures that it really is a pudding we are eating and not a poached baby elephant, though we think we are eating our daily pudding. Everything that happens in philosophy has, in the last instance, not only political consequences in theory, but also political consequences in politics, in the political class struggle. However much an ideologue tries to bury Lenin beneath a proof by historical analysis, there is always this one man standing there on the plane of history and of our lives, in the eternal current situation. He goes on talking, calmly or passionately. He goes on talking about something simple. His revolutionary practice, the practice of class struggle, about what makes it possible to act on history, not to demonstrate that revolutions are inevitable, but to make them in our unique present. A man of nothing who has started out from nothing, starting out from an unassignable place. These are, for Machiavelli, the conditions for regeneration. Theory is not a final answer. It is an ongoing dialogue with reality. The economic class struggle is a struggle against incessantly intensified exploitation, not only against the brutal material form of exploitation, capitalism's tendency to reduce wages, and against the class techniques for increasing productivity, but also around the question of the technical social division of labor that prevails in enterprises, and against bourgeois ideology and repression. The time has come in which the overriding preoccupation of bourgeois philosophers and littérateurs is the following question: what does the truth have to be for the communists to be wrong? What does Marx have to be for the communists to be wrong? Thus it is that our bourgeois politicians and philosophers fabricate the truth and the events they need to condemn their adversary the more forcefully. Hegelian logic is cavernous. It is Plato stood on his head. The world turned topsy-turvy. No longer is the Logos the body of truth, and the world its shadow on the wall. Now it is the inner shadow of the true world. Plato proceeds from the shadow to the body. Hegel from the body to the shadow, which is not recognized as a shadow until the end. We were straight-facedly told that, to understand the phenomenology and the encyclopedia, we had to go back to Abraham, Isaac, and the desert. Today it is all too obvious this sort of exegesis was merely a maneuver. Hegel is the last of the philosophers in that. Attaining absolute knowledge, he replaces the love of knowledge with knowledge. He is thus the savant, or sage, the first and last, because those who come after him can only retrace the contents of the system of knowledge. In 1806, Hegel thought of the phenomenology as part one of this system. Philosophy, which is the self-consciousness of spirit in the various moments of its development and thus in its alienation, is simply the reality of the world's contradictions translated into thought. A single word sums up the master function of philosophical practice: to draw a dividing line between the true ideas and false ideas, Lenin's words. The word seeks a resolution in itself. It seeks the mediation between itself and the world in itself, yet never produces anything more than a demiurge of words. Hegel adopted the only possible solution, contraband, but he failed to reckon with the customs officer Marx, who caught him in the act of smuggling in false contents. It can be argued that philosophy has not gone beyond Hegelianism, and that the struggles of our recent history are merely the conflict of left against right in Hegel. The philosopher only rewrites his own alienation in terms of being. Because he is alienated from himself in his thought is the essence of alienation. Today we see that the question of Hegel is, for the bourgeoisie, merely a matter of impugning Marx. This great return to Hegel is simply a desperate attempt to combat Marx, cast in the specific form that revisionism takes in imperialism's final crisis, a revisionism of a fascist type. In the battle that is philosophy, all the techniques of war, including looting and camouflage, are permissible. Philosophy is, in the last instance, class struggle in the field of theory. There is no such thing as an innocent reading. We must ask what reading we are guilty of. Without claiming to be exhaustive, I maintain that every philosophy reproduces within itself the conflict in which it finds itself compromised and caught up in the outside world. Like every intellectual, a philosophy teacher is a petty bourgeois. When he opens his mouth, it is petty bourgeois ideology that speaks. Its resources and ruses are infinite. You know what Lenin says about intellectuals? As a mass, they remain incorrigibly petty bourgeois in ideology. To become ideologists of the working class, intellectuals have to carry out a radical revolution in their ideas, a long, painful, and difficult re-education. A single word sums up the master function of philosophical practice: to draw a dividing line between the true ideas and false ideas. Lenin's words. It is the masses who make history. Theory is not a set of fixed and eternal truths, but a historically grounded practice. Those who are in ideology believe themselves by definition outside ideology. Ideology never says, "I am ideological." Ideology is indispensable in any society if men are to be formed, transformed, and equipped to respond to the demands of their conditions of existence. Ideology represents the imaginary relationship of individuals to their real conditions of existence. Ideology has very little to do with consciousness. It is profoundly unconscious. Theory is not a weapon, but a means of understanding power relations. The ultimate condition of production is therefore the reproduction of the conditions of production. Occasionally, the whole class struggle may be summed up in the struggle for one word against another word. If someone asks, "But what in the end is a philosopher?" I would say, a philosopher is a human being who fights in theory. Relations of production are first reproduced by the materiality of the processes of production and circulation, but ideological relations are immediately present in these same processes. Theory is not an abstract intellectual exercise, but a concrete engagement with the world. For it is characteristic of ideology to impose self-evident facts as self-evident facts. We have the inevitable reaction. That's obvious. It is indeed a peculiarity of ideology that it imposes, without appearing to do so, obviousnesses. That's obvious. That's right. That's true. Theory is not detached from practice, but an integral part of it. When he opens his mouth, it is petty bourgeois ideology that speaks. Its resources and ruses are infinite. To philosophize with open eyes is to philosophize in the dark. Only the blind can look straight at the sun. Theory serves the purpose of shedding light on the underlying power relations that shape our social, political, and economic systems.